I stood in my sister's dining room, my 6-year-old son's hand trembling in mine as my 12-year-old nephew pointed at the door and said, with cold, calculated cruelty, "Trash belongs outside." My mother sipped her expensive wine. My sister smiled. And in that moment I realized I had just funded my own humiliation to the tune of $400,000. But before you hear how I burned it all down, hit that like button, subscribe to hear more stories of people who finally said enough, and drop a comment telling me if you would have done the same thing. Because what I did next changed everything. Let me take you back to where this nightmare really began. 3 months earlier, I was sitting in my office at Memorial Hospital reviewing payment disputes as the head of billing when my phone rang. It was Principal Morrison from Daniel's elementary school, and the tone in her voice made my stomach drop before she even spoke. "Miss Brennan, I need you to come pick up Daniel. There's been an incident." An incident. That was the word that would change everything, though I didn't know it yet. I grabbed my purse, told my assistant I had an emergency, and drove the 15 minutes to Riverside Elementary with my heart hammering in my chest. When I arrived, Daniel was sitting in the principal's office, his small body curled into itself, a bruise blooming on his cheek. My professional composure shattered instantly. "What happened?" I demanded, kneeling in front of my son. Principal Morrison cleared her throat. "Daniel was involved in an altercation with another student, a 5th grader named Marcus, who has been, according to several witnesses, repeatedly bothering Daniel during recess." Bothering, I felt my voice rise. "My son has a bruise on his face. Daniel hit Marcus first," she continued, her tone maddeningly neutral. "After Marcus called him names and pushed him down. We have a zero-tolerance policy for fighting, so Daniel will be suspended for 3 days." I stared at her, then at my son, who wouldn't meet my eyes. Daniel, my sensitive, book-loving boy who apologized to furniture when he bumped into it, had been pushed so far that he fought back. And now he was being punished for it. "You're suspending the victim," I said flatly. "We're suspending both boys, Ms. Brennan. It's policy." I didn't argue further. There was no point. I signed the paperwork, took Daniel's hand, and walked out of that school with a new understanding of how the world worked. Even when you're the one being hurt, if you defend yourself, you still get blamed. The drive home was silent, except for Daniel's occasional sniffles. I lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood, nothing like the sprawling house my sister Lauren lived in with her hedge fund manager husband, but it was ours. Safe. Or at least I thought it was. Once inside, I sat Daniel down on our worn but comfortable couch and pulled him close. "Tell me what happened, baby." His voice was so small. "Marcus keeps saying I'm weird. That I'm a baby because I like to read. Today he said nobody likes me and that's why I don't have a dad." His breath hitched. I told him to stop and he pushed me. So I pushed him back, and then he hit me, and I hit him, and then the teacher came. My heart cracked open. Daniel's father had left before he was even born, and while I had worked hard to make sure my son never felt that absence bullies had a way of finding your softest spots. "Listen to me," I said, tilting his chin up so he had to look at me. "You are not weird. You are brilliant and kind and brave. Marcus is the one with the problem, not you. Then why does everyone hate me?" "They don't hate you, Daniel. They don't understand you. But I do, and I will always be here." He buried his face in my shoulder and cried, and I held him while my own tears fell silently into his hair. This was what single motherhood looked like at its rawest. Me against the world, trying to be enough for a child who deserved so much more than the hand he'd been dealt. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother: "Don't forget Sunday dinner. Lauren's making something special." Sunday dinner. The weekly obligation I had never once missed in 7 years, despite the fact that every single one left me feeling hollow and diminished. But I went because family was supposed to matter. Because my mother asked. Because I kept hoping that eventually they would see me as more than just the family ATM. That Sunday, Daniel and I arrived 15 minutes late because he had been anxious all morning, asking if Connor, Lauren's oldest son, would be mean to him. I had promised it would be fine, hating myself for the lie even as I told it. Lauren opened the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Well, look who finally decided to show up. I was starting to think you'd forgotten about us, Claire." "Oh wait, you never forget when there's free food involved, do you?" The comment hit like a slap, but I swallowed it down as I always did. "Sorry, we had a rough morning." "Rough morning," Lauren repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Must be nice to have mornings to have rough. Some of us have real responsibilities." Her husband, Greg, appeared behind her, nodding at me with cool politeness. "Claire." "Daniel." We walked into their pristine home, all marble countertops and designer furniture, the kind of place where you were afraid to touch anything. My mother was already seated at the dining table, a glass of expensive Pinot Noir in her hand, wearing the pearl necklace I had bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. The one that cost me a month's worth of grocery money. "Claire, darling," she said, though. Her attention immediately went to Daniel. "Oh, what happened to your face, sweetheart?" Before I could answer, my brother Kevin emerged from the study. Kevin, the successful corporate lawyer who lived in Manhattan and only came home when there was money to be discussed. His presence was my first warning that this dinner was going to be different. "Claire," he said, not getting up from his seat. He shook Greg's hand, kissed Lauren on the cheek, and completely ignored Daniel and me beyond that single-word acknowledgement. The table was set beautifully because Lauren never did anything halfway. Connor, the 12-year-old demon spawn, sat next to his 9-year-old twin siblings, Emma and Ethan. All three were looking at Daniel like he was a particularly interesting bug they wanted to squash. So Connor said as soon as we sat down, "I heard you got suspended." "My mom told me." "What'd you do, cry on someone?" Lauren said, but she was smiling as she said it. "I got in a fight," Daniel said, quietly staring at his plate. "You?" "In a fight," Connor laughed. "Did you fight with a book?" The twins giggled. My mother said nothing. Kevin smirked into his wine glass. I felt my jaw tighten. Daniel defended himself against a bully. "Something I'm sure you wouldn't understand, Connor, since you've never had to." "Excuse me," Lauren's voice went sharp. "Are you implying something about my son?" "I'm saying maybe we should change the subject." But Kevin leaned forward, his lawyer instincts sensing blood in the water. "So you're saying Daniel started a fight at school and got suspended, and somehow that's everyone else's fault?" "He didn't start anything. He was being bullied. Kids get teased, Claire. It's part of growing up. Maybe if Daniel wasn't so sensitive, he'd have an easier time." The words hung in the air like poison. Daniel's hand found mine under the table, squeezing tight. Kevin, my mother, finally spoke up, but not to defend her grandson. "Maybe we should talk about why we're all here. You said you had news." And there it was. The real reason for this dinner. Kevin straightened up suddenly, all business. "Greg and I have been discussing an investment opportunity. There's a commercial property in Midtown that's undervalued, but we need to move fast. We're pooling resources, and we thought, given Mom's situation, she might want to be part of it." "Mom's situation?" I asked carefully. My mother suddenly looked uncomfortable. "Well, Claire, you know how expensive things have gotten. My rent went up again, and with the car payment I co-signed for," I said. "Yes, well, that's temporary. But this investment could really help me get back on my feet. Kevin says the returns would be substantial." I looked around the table. Greg wouldn't meet my eyes. Lauren was studying her wine glass. Kevin had that practiced neutral expression that lawyers use when they're lying. And my mother, who I had been giving $3,000 a month for the past 7 years, was asking for more. "How much?" I asked. $50,000 to start," Kevin said smoothly. "But the potential returns? I don't have $50,000. "Come on," Lauren interjected. "You've got that hospital job. Surely you've saved something." That hospital job. As if being head of billing at a major hospital wasn't a real career. As if the 70-hour weeks and constant stress were just a hobby I pursued for fun. "Any savings I have are for Daniel's future." "See, this is what I'm talking about," Kevin said, setting down his glass. "Always thinking small. This is why you'll always struggle, Claire. No vision." No vision. The words came out harder than I intended. I've given Mom over $400,000 in the last 7 years. Where exactly did that money go, since we're talking about vision? The table went silent. My mother's face paled. Lauren's eyes widened. Kevin's jaw clenched. "You're exaggerating," my mother said weakly. "Am I?" "Let's see. $3,000 a month for 7 years. That's $252,000, plus the $20,000 for your medical bills. The $15,000 when your roof needed repairs. The $30,000 I gave you for the down payment on your car. The various birthdays, Christmases, emergencies. Should I go on?" Lauren hissed. "This is inappropriate dinner conversation." "Is it?" "Because apparently discussing how I should give you more money is perfectly appropriate." Daniel's hand was crushing mine now. I could feel his anxiety radiating off him. I should have left then. I should have grabbed my son and walked out. But years of conditioning of being the family peacemaker kept me in my seat. "Let's just eat," Greg suggested, ever the diplomat. We ate in tense silence. Daniel barely touched his food. Halfway through the meal, he reached for his water glass and knocked it over, sending water cascading across the table directly onto Connor's designer shirt. Connor jumped up screaming, "You little brat. Look what you did." I'm sorry. Daniel was already apologizing, tears streaming down his face. "It's fine, Connor, it's just water," I said, grabbing napkins. But Connor wasn't done. He looked at Daniel with pure hatred, a look no 12-year-old should be capable of, and then he did something I'll never forget. He spit directly in my son's face. "You useless piece of trash," he hissed. Daniel froze. I froze. The entire table froze. And then Connor smiled, looked directly at me, and said with perfect clarity, "Trash belongs outside." He pointed at the door. Lauren laughed. It was a small laugh, quickly covered, but I heard it. Greg smiled behind his hand. Kevin smirked. My mother looked down at her plate, swirling her wine, saying nothing. Something inside me snapped. Not broke. Snapped. Like a bone that had been bent too far for too long, finally giving way. I stood up slowly, deliberately. Every eye in the room turned to me. "We're leaving," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Claire, don't be dramatic," my mother started. Dramatic, I looked at her. Really looked at her. At the woman who had birthed me, raised me, and then spent the last 7 years bleeding me dry while watching my son be humiliated. "Did you just hear what your grandson said to your grandson? Connor is a child. He didn't mean..." He meant every word. "And you all let him." You smiled. You laughed. I took Daniel's hand. He was shaking. "We're done here." "Claire, sit down," Kevin ordered. "You're making a scene." "No, Kevin. I'm making a choice." "Come on, Daniel." I walked toward the door, my son's hand in mine, and I didn't look back. Not when my mother called my name. Not when Lauren shouted that I was being ridiculous. Not when Kevin threatened that I'd regret this. I got Daniel into the car, buckled him in, and drove home through tears I couldn't control. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. When we got inside our apartment, Daniel finally broke down completely. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry I spilled the water. I'm sorry I'm not good enough." "Stop." I pulled him into my arms, holding him so tight I thought we might fuse together. "You listen to me, Daniel. You are more than good enough. You are everything. And I am sorry. I am so sorry that I brought you into that house. That I exposed you to those people. That I let them treat us like we were less than human. I wish we never had to see them again," he whispered. "We won't," I said, and as I said it, I felt something settle in my chest. A decision. A certainty. "I promise you, baby, we will never go back there again." After I put Daniel to bed, I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. It was 10 p.m. on a Sunday night, and I was about to change my entire life. First, I logged into my bank account. I found every automatic transfer to my mother. $3,000 a month like clockwork. I canceled them all. Every single one. Then I called my bank's after-hours line and removed myself as co-signer on my mother's car loan. They told me I'd need to submit written documentation, so I typed up a formal letter right there, printed it, and prepared it for overnight delivery. Next, I opened my email. My hands were steady now, purpose driving out the shaking rage. I composed an email to my mother with copies to Lauren and Kevin. The subject line was simple: financial support terminated effective immediately. The body of the email was even simpler. I attached a spreadsheet I had been keeping for years, documenting every single dollar I had given my mother. Every payment, every emergency, every guilt-induced transfer. The total came to $387,412. The email read, "Mom, Lauren, and Kevin. Effective immediately, I am terminating all financial support to any member of this family. As you can see from the attached documentation, I have provided nearly $400,000 in support over the past 7 years. This support was given freely, but it is now clear that generosity has been mistaken for obligation. I will no longer be attending family dinners. I will not be taking calls regarding financial matters. I will not be guilted, manipulated, or abused into funding lifestyles I can barely afford myself while my son is called trash in front of his grandmother. The bank has been notified about the car loan. You have 30 days to refinance in your own name. I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Claire." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I called my lawyer. Elizabeth Chen had been my friend since college, and she had been telling me for years to set boundaries with my family. I got her voicemail. "Liz, it's Claire. I need your help. I'm cutting my family off financially, and I need to make sure they can't come after me legally. I'm done being their ATM. Call me in the morning. I sat back in my chair and waited for the panic to hit, but it didn't come. Instead, I felt lighter than I had in years. Free. Terrified, but free. I didn't have to wait long for the response. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m. the next morning. My mother's number. I declined the call. It rang again immediately. Declined. By the time I was getting Daniel ready for his first day back at school after the suspension, I had 37 missed calls and 62 text messages. I read through them while Daniel ate his cereal, and each one was exactly what I expected. Mom, Claire, what have you done? Call me immediately. Mom, how could you do this to me? I'm your mother. Mom, you're being cruel and selfish. Lauren, you're out of your mind. Mom is crying hysterically. Lauren, this is so typical of you making everything about yourself. Kevin, call me now. We need to discuss this rationally. Kevin, you're making a huge mistake. Don't be stupid. I deleted them all without responding. Then I blocked their numbers. Every single one. Daniel looked up from his cereal. Who keeps calling? Nobody important, I said, and I meant it. I dropped Daniel off at school, hugged him twice as long as usual, and went to work. I made it to my office, closed the door, and finally let myself feel the full weight of what I had done. I had just blown up my entire family. The people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. The people I had sacrificed everything for. And I didn't regret it for a second. Elizabeth called me at 9. Tell me everything, she said. I did. I told her about Sunday dinner, about Connor, about the years of financial abuse disguised as family obligation. I told her about the car loan and the nearly $400,000 and the way my mother had sipped her wine while my son was called trash. Holy shit, Claire, she said when I finished. You should have called me years ago. I know. But I'm calling now. What do I need to do to protect myself? First, you did the right thing documenting everything. Keep that spreadsheet. Print it, save it, back it up. Second, I'll draft a formal letter to the bank about the car loan. We need to make sure you're completely removed from that liability. Third, I want you to keep a record of every contact attempt they make. Every call, every text, every email. If they show up at your work or your home, document it. You think they will? Claire, you just cut off nearly $400,000 of support. Yeah, I think they will. She was right. At 11:30 that morning, while I was in a meeting about Medicare reimbursements, my assistant knocked on the door. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a woman here who says she's your sister. She's very insistent. My blood ran cold. Tell security to escort her out. She says it's an emergency. It's not. Tell security now, please. I watched through my office window as Lauren was politely but firmly removed from the building by 2 security guards. She was making a scene, her voice carrying across the lobby, and I felt a flush of humiliation that she would do this at my workplace. But I didn't go down. I didn't engage. I stayed in my meeting and let the guards do their job. 20 minutes later, Lauren was calling from the parking lot. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail that I listened to out of morbid curiosity. Claire, what the hell is wrong with you? Mom is devastated. She can't afford her rent without your help. Do you want her to be homeless? Is that what you want? All because Connor said something stupid. He's a kid, Claire. Kids say mean things. You're destroying this family over a child's tantrum. Call me back. We need to fix this. I saved the voicemail, added it to a folder Elizabeth had told me to create, and went back to work. The calls continued throughout the week. My mother left sobbing messages. Kevin left threatening ones. Lauren oscillated between begging and accusing. I didn't respond to any of them. On Thursday, Elizabeth called me. The bank received your letter. They're processing the removal of you as co-signer, but your mother needs to refinance within 30 days or the car will be repossessed. That's her problem now, I said. Agreed. But Claire, you should know that Kevin called my office today. He wanted to know if I was advising you to do this, and if I understood the legal ramifications of your actions. What did you tell him? I told him I couldn't discuss my client's matters with him, and that if he continued to harass you or me, we'd pursue a restraining order. He shut up pretty fast after that. Thank you, Liz. That's what friends are for. How are you holding up? I looked out my office window at the hospital parking lot at the normal people going about their normal days, and I felt surprisingly calm. I'm okay, I said. Better than okay, actually. And I was. Because for the first time in 7 years, I wasn't constantly calculating how much money I had left after supporting my mother. I wasn't dreading Sunday dinner. I wasn't walking on eggshells trying to keep the peace while slowly dying inside. The following Sunday, Daniel and I had our own dinner. Pizza, a Disney movie, and ice cream sundaes. No judgment. No criticism. No one calling my son trash. "This is the best Sunday ever," Daniel said, chocolate sauce on his chin. "Yeah, baby. It really is. But I knew it wasn't over. My family wasn't going to let $400,000 walk away without a fight. 2 weeks after I cut them off, I got an email from Kevin that made my blood boil. It was titled Proposed Resolution and was written in full lawyer speak. The email detailed a payment plan where I would resume supporting my mother at a reduced rate of $2,000 per month, attend family dinners once a month instead of weekly, and agree to counseling sessions with a family therapist of their choosing. In exchange, they would forgive my overreaction at dinner and agree to move forward. I forwarded it to Elizabeth without comment. She called immediately. "Is he serious?" she asked. "Completely. Claire, this is insane. They're treating this like a contract negotiation. Your brother is actually trying to broker a deal where you pay your mother $2,000 a month for the privilege of being abused. What should I do?" "Nothing. Don't respond. Let them sit with the silence. It's killing them more than anything you could say." She was right. My silence was apparently the cruelest thing I could have done. More calls came. More emails. More voicemails. Each one progressively more desperate or angry. My mother's messages were the hardest to ignore. She cried. She begged. She told me she loved me. She said she didn't understand why I was doing this. She promised things would be different. But not once did she apologize for what Connor said. Not once did she acknowledge that she had sat there and watched my son be humiliated. Not once did she ask how Daniel was doing. That told me everything I needed to know. 3 weeks after cutting them off, my mother's car was repossessed. I know because Lauren showed up at my apartment building, something I had explicitly told security not to allow, but she tailgated in behind another resident. She pounded on my door at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday. Daniel was doing homework at the kitchen table. "Stay here," I told him, and I opened the door. Lauren looked terrible. Her hair wasn't perfectly styled. Her makeup was smudged. Her designer clothes wrinkled. "They took Mom's car," she said without preamble. "She can't get to her doctor's appointments. She can't get groceries. This is your fault." "No," I said calmly. "This is Mom's fault for buying a car she couldn't afford, and my fault for enabling that decision by co-signing. But I'm not enabling it anymore. You're heartless. I'm done being a doormat. Mom needs that car, Claire. She's 62 years old. What is she supposed to do? She's supposed to take the bus like millions of other people do. Or Lauren, here's a thought: you could drive her places. You could help her. You could take some responsibility for your own mother instead of expecting me to fund everything. I have 3 kids and a husband and a life. And I have a son and a job and bills, and somehow I was supposed to manage all of that plus Mom's entire lifestyle." I shook my head. "No, not anymore. You're going to regret this. When Mom dies alone because she couldn't get to the hospital, that's going to be on you. Lauren, if Mom dies alone, it'll be because the 3 of you couldn't be bothered to help her unless someone else was paying for it. Now get out of my building before I call the police." I closed the door in her face and locked it. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From rage. From years of suppressed anger finally finding its voice. Daniel was standing in the kitchen doorway, his homework forgotten. "Was that Aunt Lauren?" "Yes." "Is Grandma okay?" I knelt down in front of him. "Grandma's fine. She's just going to have to start being responsible for herself. Like a grown-up should be. We're not going back there, are we? To their house? Never," I promised. Never again. The next day I went to the elementary school and met with Principal Morrison and the school counselor. I explained in clinical terms that Daniel had been exposed to verbal abuse from extended family members and that we were no longer in contact with them. I asked them to note in his file that only I was authorized to pick him up and that under no circumstances should my mother, Lauren, Kevin, or Greg be allowed access to him. They agreed immediately, adding the names to a no-contact list. I also enrolled Daniel in a weekly counseling session with the school counselor to help him process what had happened. He deserved support, and I was going to make sure he got it. 4 weeks after I cut off my family, I received a letter from my mother. Not an email. An actual letter handwritten on fancy stationery. "Dear Claire," it began. "I don't understand what I did to deserve this treatment. I gave you life. I raised you. I loved you. And this is how you repay me. By abandoning me in my time of need. I can't afford my apartment. I can't pay my bills. I'm terrified every day that I'll end up on the street and you don't even care. Lauren and Greg have been helping as much as they can, but they have their own expenses. Kevin says you've become vindictive and cruel. I never thought my own daughter would turn out this way. If you have any love left for me at all, please reconsider. I'm begging you. Mom. I read the letter twice, waiting for the guilt to hit. Waiting for the doubt. Waiting for the voice in my head that had always told me I was being selfish, that family came first, that I owed them. But that voice was gone. In its place was something new. Clarity. I sat down and wrote my own letter. On plain paper. With a pen. And I told my mother the truth. Mom, I gave you $400,000 over 7 years. I co-signed loans I couldn't afford. I sacrificed my own financial security and my son's future to support a lifestyle you refused to adjust. And when my son was called trash and spit on, you said nothing. You did nothing. You sipped your wine and let it happen. You don't get to play the victim now. You made choices. You chose expensive wine and expensive rent and expensive everything, knowing I was paying for it. You chose to side with Lauren and Connor over me and Daniel. You chose to enable abuse. These are consequences, not cruelty. You're not going to be homeless. You're going to have to live within your means for the first time in a decade. You're going to have to ask Lauren and Kevin to help you for once instead of putting everything on me. And maybe, just maybe, you're going to have to acknowledge that you treated me like an ATM instead of a daughter. I do love you, Mom. But I love myself and my son more. And we deserve better than what you gave us. Claire. I mailed the letter and felt nothing but relief. 5 weeks after cutting my family off, something shifted. The calls slowed down. The emails became less frequent. My mother stopped leaving tearful voicemails. Lauren stopped showing up at my apartment. I thought maybe they had finally accepted it, that they had moved on. I was wrong. Word had gotten out. Through mutual friends, through community connections, through the invisible network that exists in every suburb, people found out that I had cut off my family. And they had opinions. Some people thought I was right. Some thought I was heartless. But everyone was talking about it. I heard through a friend of a friend that Lauren and Greg were humiliated. That their social circle now knew they had been essentially living off my money while treating me like garbage. That people were asking questions about why I had been supporting my mother in the first place and why they hadn't been. Kevin apparently lost a potential client who had heard about the situation and decided they didn't want to work with someone who treated family that way. My mother had to move out of her expensive apartment and into a small one-bedroom in a less desirable neighborhood. She had to give up her wine club and her spa memberships and her lavish lifestyle. And I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little bit. What I felt was free. Daniel started thriving. Without the stress of weekly humiliation, dinners without the anxiety of being around Connor, he began to come out of his shell. He made friends at school. His teacher told me he was more confident, more engaged. He smiled more. We spent our Sundays doing whatever we wanted. Museums, parks, movies, game nights at home. It was just the two of us, and it was perfect. I got a promotion at work, head of revenue cycle management. It came with a significant raise and more responsibilities, but I was ready for it. Without the constant drain of supporting my mother, I could actually save money. I could plan for Daniel's future. I could breathe. 6 weeks after the dinner from hell, Daniel's school held an award ceremony. It was for students who had shown significant improvement or overcome challenges. Daniel was receiving a Courage Award for standing up to his bully and for showing resilience in difficult circumstances. I RSVP'd for the event, marked it on my calendar, and didn't think much about it until the day before when the principal's assistant called. Miss Brennan, we wanted to give you a heads up that Daniel's grandmother also RSVP'd for tomorrow's event. She called last week and said she was his emergency contact. My blood went cold. She is not his emergency contact. She's on the no contact list. Yes, we have that noted. But she RSVP'd before we processed your request. We wanted you to know she might be there. Can you uninvite her? We can't prevent family members from attending public school events, but we can make sure she doesn't have access to Daniel. Would you like us to have additional security present? Yes, I said. Absolutely yes. I called Elizabeth immediately. They're not going to let this go, are they? I asked. Doesn't sound like it. But Claire, you're doing nothing wrong. You're allowed to protect your son. You're allowed to have boundaries. If they show up and cause a scene, that's on them, not you. The next evening, I dressed Daniel in his best outfit, took a deep breath, and drove to the school. The auditorium was packed with proud parents and excited children. I found a seat near the front and tried to ignore the knot of anxiety in my stomach. Then I saw them. My mother, Lauren, Greg, and all three of their kids filed into the auditorium and sat in the back row. My mother looked smaller, somehow diminished. Lauren looked furious. Greg looked uncomfortable. Connor saw Daniel and smirked. I turned back around and focused on my son. This was his night. His moment. They weren't going to ruin it. The ceremony began. Various awards were handed out. Students beamed with pride as their names were called. And then it was Daniel's turn. Our next award is the Courage Award, Principal Morrison announced. This goes to a student who has faced significant challenges with bravery and determination. This year's recipient is Daniel Brennan. Daniel looked at me, eyes wide. I nodded encouragingly. He walked up to the stage, his small hands shaking as he accepted the certificate. Daniel, Principal Morrison continued, has shown exceptional courage this year in standing up for himself and working through difficult situations. He's an example to all of us about resilience. Would Daniel's mother like to come up and say a few words? I hadn't prepared anything, but I stood up and walked to the stage anyway, taking Daniel's hand. I looked out at the audience, at the other parents who had no idea what we'd been through, at my family in the back row watching with expressions ranging from anger to shame. Thank you, I said, my voice steady. As a parent, the hardest thing in the world is watching your child hurt and not being able to fix it immediately. Daniel has taught me something invaluable this year. He's taught me that courage isn't about never being afraid. It's about being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. He's taught me that standing up for yourself isn't being difficult or dramatic. It's recognizing your worth and refusing to accept less than you deserve. He's taught me that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who hurt you, even when the world tells you that you should stay because they're family. I paused, looking directly at the back row. My mother's face had gone pale. Lauren was gripping the armrest of her chair. Daniel faced a bully who tried to make him feel worthless. And instead of accepting that treatment, he stood up for himself. He got punished for it, which wasn't fair. But he didn't let that experience define him. He kept going. He kept being kind, kept being brave, kept being himself. And in doing that, he taught his mother how to do the same thing. I squeezed Daniel's hand. So this award isn't just for Daniel. It's a reminder to every adult in this room that we have to model the behavior we want to see in our children. We have to show them that their value isn't determined by how others treat them. We have to show them that sometimes love means protecting yourself even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. We have to show them that people who truly care about you will never make you feel like trash. And if they do, they don't belong in your life. The audience erupted in applause. Parents stood up. Teachers clapped. And in the back row, my family sat frozen, understanding exactly what I had just done. I had claimed my story. In public. With witnesses. I had drawn a line in the sand and dared them to cross it. After the ceremony, parents mingled in the lobby. Several people came up to congratulate Daniel, to tell him how proud they should be. One mother, whose son was in Daniel's class, pulled me aside. I don't know what you're going through, she said quietly, but that was the bravest thing I've ever heard. My sister treats me the same way I'm guessing from the look on those people's faces in the back your family treats you. You just gave me the courage to stop accepting it. Then Daniel's award just helped 2 people, I said, tears pricking my eyes. I saw my family approaching from across the lobby. My mother led the way, her face streaked with tears. Lauren was right behind her, looking like she wanted to murder me. Kevin had apparently decided not to show up, which was probably wise. Claire, my mother said, her voice breaking. Please, can we talk? There's nothing to talk about, Mom. I'm sorry. I should have said something that night. I should have defended Daniel. I was wrong. You were wrong about a lot of things, I said. But that apology is 7 weeks too late. And it doesn't change anything. I'm your mother, she said desperately. You can't just cut me out of your life forever. Watch me. Lauren stepped forward, her face twisted with rage. You just humiliated us in front of the entire school. How dare you? How dare I felt my voice rise. How dare you let your son spit on mine? How dare you laugh when he was called trash? How dare you spend 7 years treating me like nothing more than a bank account while I sacrificed everything for you? You want to talk about humiliation, Lauren? Try having your own family make you feel worthless for years while you pay for the privilege. We never asked you to give us money, she hissed. You didn't have to ask. You expected it. You demanded it. You manipulated and guilt-tripped and made me feel like I owed you something for existing. Well, I don't. I don't owe you anything anymore. Other parents were starting to stare. Principal Morrison was making her way over looking concerned. I didn't care. Claire, please, my mother tried again. I can't afford my rent. I had to move. I have nothing left. You have Lauren. You have Kevin. You have Greg. You have 3 other family members who can support you for once. Ask them. See how it feels to be on the receiving end of obligation. This is cruel, my mother whispered. No, Mom. Cruelty is watching your grandson get abused and doing nothing. This is consequences. There's a difference. I took Daniel's hand. We're leaving now. If any of you try to contact me or my son again, I will file for a restraining order. I will use every legal option available to me. I will make sure that the entire community knows exactly what you did and why I left. Stay away from us. I walked out of that school with my head held high, Daniel's hand in mine, and I never looked back. The weeks that followed were the most peaceful I'd had in years. No more calls. No more emails. No more surprise visits. They had finally gotten the message. Through the grapevine, I heard that my mother had moved in with Lauren temporarily, which was apparently causing massive tension in that household. Greg was furious about the additional expense and the disruption. The kids were complaining about sharing space. Lauren was stressed to the point of having actual health problems. Kevin had apparently offered to help financially, but nowhere near the amount I had been providing. Turns out it's easy to judge someone else's generosity when you're not the one being asked to be generous. I heard that Connor was having problems at school. Other parents had heard what happened, and their children were no longer allowed to play with him. He was experiencing for the first time in his privileged life social consequences for his actions. Part of me felt bad for him. He was 12. He had learned his cruelty from somewhere. But mostly I felt relieved that he was learning this lesson now while he was still young enough to change rather than growing up to be another Kevin. 3 months after cutting off my family, I received a letter from my mother. This one was different. It wasn't begging. It wasn't guilt-tripping. It was just sad. Claire, I understand now why you did what you did. I understand that I enabled bad behavior and took advantage of your kindness. I understand that I chose comfort over integrity and money over family. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect anything from you anymore. I just want you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't the mother you deserved. I'm sorry I didn't protect Daniel. I'm sorry I valued the wrong things. I hope someday you can find peace with what happened. I hope Daniel grows up knowing he deserves better than what we gave him. I hope you're happy. Love, Mom. I read the letter 3 times. I cried, but I didn't respond. Maybe someday I would. Maybe in a few years when the wounds weren't so fresh, when I could trust that she had really changed and not just learned to say the right words. But not now. Now I needed to focus on building the life Daniel and I deserved. I put the letter in a box in my closet and went back to living. 6 months after that terrible Sunday dinner, Daniel and I moved into a new apartment. Nothing fancy, but it was ours, and it had 2 real bedrooms and a balcony where we could have breakfast on weekend mornings. I could afford it because I wasn't sending $3,000 a month to my mother. I could afford the security deposit and the first and last month's rent and new furniture because I wasn't co-signing loans I couldn't afford. We painted Daniel's room his favorite color, blue like the ocean. We hung up his drawings and his awards and his growing collection of books. We made it a home. On our first Sunday in the new apartment, Daniel and I sat on the balcony eating pancakes and watching the sunrise. Mom, he said, syrup on his chin. Are you happy? Yeah, baby, I said. I really am. Me too. I like it being just us. Me too. Do you think Grandma is okay? It was the first time he'd mentioned her in months. I think Grandma is learning an important lesson, I said carefully. About how to treat people. About what really matters. It's a hard lesson, but it's an important one. Do you miss her? I thought about that. Did I miss my mother? Or did I miss the idea of a mother I never really had? I miss what I wish we could have been, I said honestly. But I don't miss how she made me feel. And that's okay. Sometimes we have to let go of people we love because loving them was hurting us. Like putting trash outside, Daniel said matter-of-factly. I looked at him, this wise little boy who had been through so much. Yeah, I said. Exactly like that. I'm glad we put the trash outside, Mom. Our house is cleaner now. I pulled him into a hug, laughing through tears. You're absolutely right, baby. It is. 1 year after cutting off my family, I was promoted again. Senior Director of Revenue Operations. It came with a corner office and enough of a salary increase that I could start putting money away for Daniel's college fund. Real money. Substantial money. I could afford dance classes for Daniel, who it turned out had a love for ballet that he'd been too afraid to pursue before. I could afford therapy for both of us, regular sessions with professionals who helped us process the trauma and build healthier patterns. I could afford a vacation, our first real vacation, just the two of us, to a beach in Florida where Daniel learned to boogie board and I learned to relax. I could afford to live, not just survive. And every time I checked my bank account and saw money actually accumulating instead of disappearing, I felt a surge of satisfaction. This was what my life could have been all along if I hadn't been funding my own abuse. At work, I gained a reputation as someone who didn't take nonsense from anyone. Someone who set clear boundaries and enforced them. Someone who was fair but firm. Someone who valued herself and expected others to do the same. My colleagues respected me in a way they hadn't before, because I respected myself now. Daniel started middle school. He was nervous about it, worried that he'd be bullied again, that the pattern would repeat, but something had changed in him. He walked differently now. Taller. More confident. He knew his worth. On his first day, he came home excited. I made friends, Mom. Real friends. We talked about books and they thought I was cool. That's because you are cool, I said. I know, he said with a grin. I finally know. That night I lay in bed thinking about how far we'd come. From that terrible Sunday dinner to this moment. From being called trash to knowing our value. From being victims to being survivors to being victors. I thought about the $400,000 I'd given away. It seemed like so much money. But you know what? I'd earned every penny of it back. Not in dollars, but in peace. In self-respect. In the relationship I now had with my son. In the life we were building together. It was the best investment I'd ever made. 2 years after cutting off my family, I ran into Greg at a coffee shop downtown. It was awkward. He saw me, I saw him, and for a moment we both considered pretending we hadn't. But we were adults. We nodded at each other. Claire, he said. Greg, how are you? I'm good. Really good. You? He looked tired. Older than he should have. Surviving. Lauren and I were working through some things. I didn't ask what things. It wasn't my business anymore. How's Daniel? He asked. Thriving. He's in middle school now. Doing great. Greg nodded, looking down at his coffee. Look, I owe you an apology. What happened that night, what Connor said, I should have stopped it. I should have defended Daniel. I was a coward, and I'm sorry. It was the apology I'd been waiting for. From someone. Anyone. Thank you, I said. That means something. For what it's worth, Connor's been in therapy. We've been working on a lot of things with him. He understands what he did was wrong. He's written you and Daniel letters apologizing. Lauren has them. She's been too afraid to send them. I appreciate that, I said. But Greg, I need you to understand something. Even if Connor is sorry, even if he's changed, that doesn't mean I'm ready to have you all back in our lives. Maybe someday. But not now. I understand. I do. I wanted you to know that you were right. About all of it. About the money and the way we treated you and the entitlement. You were right to walk away. How's Patricia? I asked, surprising myself. She's living with us still. It's hard. She's different now. Quiero. She talks about you sometimes. About how she wishes she could go back and do things differently. We all have those wishes, I said. But we can't go back. We can only go forward. Yeah, Greg said. Yeah, we can. We stood there for another moment, two people who used to be family who weren't sure what they were now. Take care, Claire, he said finally. You too, Greg. I walked out of that coffee shop feeling lighter. Not because I had forgiven them exactly, but because I had closure. Because I knew that my decision had ripple effects beyond just my own life. Because even if they hadn't learned their lesson fast enough to save our relationship, they were learning it. And that was something. 3 years after that Sunday dinner, Daniel came home from school with a permission slip for a career day. Parents were invited to come talk about their jobs. Will you come, Mom? He asked. You don't have to if you're busy. I know your job is important. Of course I'll come, I said. Always. So I went to career day and talked to a classroom full of middle schoolers about healthcare administration. About working my way up from an entry-level position to senior leadership. about the importance of financial literacy and living within your means, about setting boundaries and knowing your worth. And at the end, during the Q&A, a kid raised his hand and asked, "What's the hardest thing about your job?" I thought about it. "The hardest thing isn't the work itself," I said. "It's learning that you can't save everyone. That sometimes people don't want to be saved. They want to keep making the same mistakes and expect you to fix the consequences. And you have to learn to let them face those consequences even when you love them, because enabling them doesn't help anyone." The teacher gave me an odd look, but the kids nodded. They got it. After the presentation, Daniel hugged me in the hallway. "That was really cool, Mom. You're really cool. You're not so bad yourself, kid." "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Do you ever regret it? Cutting off Grandma and Aunt Lauren and everyone?" I knelt down so I could look him in the eye. He was almost as tall as me now, growing up so fast. "Sometimes," I said honestly. "Sometimes I miss having a big family. Sometimes I wish things could have been different. But Daniel, I will never ever regret protecting you. I will never regret teaching you that you deserve to be treated with respect. I will never regret showing you that it's okay to walk away from people who hurt you even if they're family, because you deserved better than what they gave you." We both did. "I'm glad you did it," he said. "I'm glad it's just us." "Me too, baby. Me too." Now, as I sit here telling you this story, it's been 5 years since that Sunday dinner. 5 years since Connor told my son that trash belongs outside. 5 years since I walked out of my sister's house and never looked back. Daniel is 15 now, thriving in high school, talking about colleges, dreaming about his future. He's confident and kind and brave, everything I wished for him to be. My mother sends a card every Christmas. Just a card, nothing else. No requests. No guilt trips. Just a simple message. "Thinking of you both. Love, Mom." I don't respond, but I don't throw them away either. They sit in a box in my closet next to that first letter she sent. Maybe someday I'll be ready. Maybe someday Daniel will want to reach out. But that's a decision for another day. Lauren and I have no contact. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that she and Greg eventually separated. That the stress of everything, my mother living with them, the financial pressure, the social fallout, it was too much for their marriage. I feel bad about that, but I don't feel responsible for it. They made their choices just like I made mine. Kevin moved to California for work. We've had zero contact, and I prefer it that way. As for me, I'm still at the hospital, still climbing the ladder, still building a career I'm proud of. I have friends, real friends, who value me for who I am, not what I can give them. I have a life that's full and rich and mine. Daniel and I still have our Sunday tradition. Just the two of us, no pressure, no judgment, no one telling us we're not enough. We are enough. We've always been enough. And every single Sunday when we sit down to dinner, just the two of us in our little apartment that we've made into a home, I think about that moment when Connor pointed at the door and told us we belonged outside. He was right in a way. We did belong outside. Outside of their toxic dynamic. Outside of their manipulation. Outside of their cruelty disguised as family obligation. We took ourselves outside into the fresh air, into freedom, into a life where we're valued and loved and respected. So here's what I want you to take from my story. Your value is not determined by how others treat you. Your worth is not measured by how much you can give or how much you can endure. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm, even if those people are family. If someone in your life makes you feel like trash, remember this trash belongs outside. And sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is put it there and close the door behind you. Know your worth. Set your boundaries. Protect your peace. And never ever let anyone convince you that standing up for yourself makes you the bad guy. What do you think? Have you ever had to cut off toxic family members? How did you find the courage to do it? Drop your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, hit that like button, subscribe for more real-life stories about setting boundaries and reclaiming your power, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is choose ourselves. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.